Psychic stocks. Belief shapes finance.
Yeah, we're going to uncover how occult and esoteric beliefs have shaped financial decisions and events throughout history.
From the tulip craze in the 17th century all the way to the rise of Bitcoin. We'll see how the urge to, well, predict and control financial fortunes has often pushed people to look beyond those typical explanations.
We'll be looking at things like market crashes and those big financial agreements, searching for the fingerprints of, well, astrological events, numerological beliefs, even alchemical principles.
Now, we're not here to endorse these practices or anything. It's more about understanding their intriguing role in the history of money and markets. It's a fascinating story.
So let's kick things off with a classic example of speculative frenzy. Tulip Mania. Back in the 1630s in the Netherlands, tulip bulbs, they became like these wildly speculative assets, some even trading for more than houses. Can you believe that?
This was really one of the earliest examples we have of a speculative bubble. It was fueled by a bunch of factors, including early futures contracts. These let buyers lock in prices for future tulip bulb deliveries. Kind of crazy, right?
But there's a layer to this story that's really interesting to us. This obsession with tulips, it wasn't just about their beauty. Alchemists saw tulips as like symbols of perfection and transformation, almost like a physical manifestation of wealth and immortality.
Yeah.
It's pretty deep.
And astrologers back then, they pointed to this conjunction of Jupiter, the planet of expansion and good fortune, with Venus, the planet of beauty and luxury. They saw it as a celestial sign that tulips were gonna, rise in value.
It seems like people have always looked to the stars for, well, financial guidance. And what's wild is that when the bubble finally burst in 1637, Mercury was in retrograde.
Which is a period often associated with, communication breakdowns and agreements falling apart. It's almost too perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
This alignment of events with astrological stuff, it definitely makes you think.
It really does. It shows how beliefs, both the financial ones, A&D, the metaphysical ones, can dramatically shape market trends. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Okay, so let's move on to a figure whose name is, synonymous with Wall Street, J.P. Morgan. He was known for his really sharp business mind, but he also had this surprising connection to the occult.
It's not something you usually hear about in those typical finance textbooks, right?
Yeah.
This titan of industry relying on mystical practices.
Well, you see, J.P. Morgan, he had a personal astrologer, Evangeline Adams. She reportedly played a pretty big role in his decision-making. But his interest in the esoteric stuff, it went way beyond just astrology.
So what other occult practices did he get into, this financial giant?
He was a student of numerology. He believed that numbers held a hidden power, you see. And he actually used numerological principles in some major business decisions, like when he formed General Electric.
It's like he was searching for a deeper meaning behind the numbers, not just their face value.
Exactly. He saw these connections between the financial world and these broader cosmic patterns. He was really into Hermetic philosophy, this ancient system of thought that emphasizes the interconnectedness of everything and those cyclical patterns of the universe.
So how did that philosophy, how did it actually influence his financial strategies?
He believed that Hermetic principles could help him understand economic cycles. For example, he used his understanding of these principles to try to predict when the economy would expand and contract.
So he wasn't just, reacting to market trends. He was trying to anticipate them using this esoteric lens.
It seems that way. He also consulted astrological transits, especially the movements of Saturn, which is the planet associated with discipline and restriction, to avoid risky ventures.
So even while he was building this huge financial empire, he was still looking for guidance from the cosmos.
He even factored in lunar phases when he was making acquisitions. It really makes you wonder, did Morgan's incredible success come from his sharp business mind? Or was there a touch of, mystical intuition at play? What do you think?
That's a great question. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about financial panics. Those periods of extreme market instability. The kind that often make people search for answers outside of traditional economics.
When fear takes hold, people often turn to, alternative interpretations, right? They try to make sense of the chaos.
And historically, that search often leads them to the occult.
Exactly.
So let's rewind back to 1857, the year of the Panic of 1857. It all started with the failure of the Ohio Life Insurance and Trust Company, a big financial player back then.
The impact was huge. Commodity prices tanked, railroads were facing financial ruin, and international trade basically froze.
A classic financial meltdown. But what makes this panic so interesting is how it was interpreted through a mystical lens. It's fascinating.
In the middle of all that uncertainty, people turn to different occult practices and beliefs, trying to make sense of the crisis.
Can you give us, like, some examples of those interpretations?
Sure, some religious leaders looked to biblical numerology. They focused on this idea of a 7-year cycle of economic booms and busts, which is described in the scriptures. They basically framed the panic as a kind of divine reckoning, like a punishment for too much speculation and greed.
A cosmic correction for, financial excesses. What other mystical interpretations popped up during this time?
Well, some people turned to the tarot. Readings during this time were full of cards like the Tower, which symbolizes sudden upheaval, and the Hanged Man, representing a feeling of being stuck and powerless.
It's kind of eerie how those cards seem to reflect the financial turmoil happening at the time.
And to add another layer to all of this, astrologically, the Panic of 1857 happened at the same time as a challenging aspect between Uranus, the planet of sudden change, and Pluto, the planet of transformation and power struggles.
So you've got this potent mix of financial anxieties, biblical prophecies, tarot readings, and those ominous planetary alignments.
That's a lot. It shows how people were really trying to understand the crisis on a deeper, more symbolic level, looking for explanations that went beyond just the rational.
It seems like this tendency to find mystical meaning in financial turmoil isn't just a thing of the past. If we jump ahead to the Wall Street crash of 1929, we see similar patterns emerging. It's like history repeating itself.
Right. While the crash is often blamed on things like too much speculation and stocks being overvalued, there were people in occult circles who claimed that it was foreseen. They said they predicted it through various metaphysical practices.
Really? Can you tell us about those predictions?
Some occultists said that the Wheel of Fortune card, a symbol of sudden shifts in fortune, kept showing up in tarot readings before the crash. They saw it as a warning of the impending market collapse.
Like a cosmic heads up about the changing tides of fortune.
Exactly. There are also stories about traders who practiced crystal gazing, trying to literally see the future of the market. Imagine that.
That's such an interesting blend of the mystical and the financial. Did any of these predictions actually come true?
It's tough to prove or disprove these kinds of claims after the fact, But the fact that they were circulating so widely after the crash tells us that people were desperate for answers. They wanted to understand why things had taken such a sudden and devastating turn.
It shows how much people crave explanations, even if those explanations might seem unconventional, especially when things are really uncertain.
That need for meaning and control when faced with chaos, it's a powerful human drive. And sometimes that drive leads us to look beyond the purely rational and embrace the mystical or the occult.
That brings us to the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944. This was a huge event that shaped the entire modern international financial system.
The Bretton Woods Agreement created the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, and the World Bank. It was all about stabilizing global currencies and promoting economic recovery after World War II. A big undertaking.
It is a landmark achievement in international cooperation driven by practical economic concerns. Though even so, there are some really fascinating mystical elements surrounding its timing and implementation.
Like what?
Well, for example, the conference that established the agreement took place during a full moon in Capricorn. What do you make of that?
In astrology, a full moon in Capricorn is associated with structure, authority, and long-term planning. So maybe this lunar influence contributed to that sense of purpose and focus that everyone felt at the conference. It's possible.
That's a really interesting thought. So even in this event that seems so secular, there was this subtle astrological undercurrent at play.
There's actually another layer to this as well. Some of the folks there saw the decision to peg global currencies to the US dollar, which was backed by gold at the time, as a reflection of alchemical principles. Pretty wild, right?
Alchemy, like turning lead into gold.
Not exactly, but in alchemical symbolism, gold represents purity, perfection, and stability. So pegging currencies to the gold standard could be seen as an attempt to, infuse the global financial system with these symbolic qualities. It's a thought-provoking idea.
It's amazing how these ancient esoteric ideas might have subtly influenced such a crucial economic agreement.
And to make things even more interesting, the date of the agreement was chosen for its numerological significance. They really thought of everything.
It seems like even in the world of high finance, the allure of occult symbolism is hard to resist. It's everywhere.
It really is. Whether consciously or unconsciously, these beliefs have woven themselves into the fabric of financial history. There's no doubt about it.
From the tulip fields of 17th century Holland to the halls of Bretton Woods, we've seen how occult beliefs have played a fascinating, sometimes hidden role in shaping those big financial events.
But our journey's not over yet. We still need to talk about Bitcoin and, what all of this means for you, our listeners.
Absolutely. Stick with us as we dig even deeper into this mystical side of money and explore how these historical patterns might give us some valuable insight for navigating the financial world today. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back.
Before the break, we took this incredible journey through history, uncovering how esoteric beliefs have shaped financial decisions and events. We covered everything from Tulip Mania to the Bretton Woods Agreement.
Right. And now we're going to fast forward to the digital age. We're diving into the rise of Bitcoin, a phenomenon that kind of sits between technological innovation and, occult symbolism.
Bitcoin, a lot of people call it digital gold, and it's the world's first decentralized digital currency. It operates on this revolutionary technology called blockchain.
So blockchain, it's basically this distributed ledger that keeps track of every single transaction in a super secure and transparent way. And because of that, it cuts out the middleman, like banks. That's why some people see it as a threat to those traditional financial power structures.
It's fascinating, right, how Bitcoin combines this cutting-edge technology with this almost mythical aura. It's really captured people's imaginations.
Yeah, and that mystique is, amplified by the mystery surrounding its creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. To this day, nobody knows for sure who Satoshi really is.
It's like a modern-day alchemy story, an anonymous figure working behind the scenes, creating a new form of currency that challenges the way things have always been done.
That 21 million coin limit, it also ties into numerological interpretations. The number 21 is often associated with, completion and divine cycles. It's interesting.
So that fixed supply, it could be seen as a representation of cosmic balance or a predetermined order within the Bitcoin universe. It's a way of thinking about it.
And then there's the timing of Bitcoin's launch back in 2009. Astrologically speaking, it happened during Pluto's transit through Capricorn, which is all about transforming power structures, and Uranus in Aries, the sign of disruption and innovation. Makes you think.
It's wild, right? Those astrological alignments seem to reflect the disruptive potential of Bitcoin. It really could revolutionize the financial system.
Whether or not you buy into astrology, it's hard to ignore how those planetary movements kind of mirror those themes of decentralization and disruption that Bitcoin embodies. Pretty cool.
It's like the stars aligned for a financial revolution.
Maybe. But let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about what all of this means for you, our listeners. We've gone through some fascinating connections between occultism and finance, but the question is, how can we actually use these insights in our own financial lives?
That's the big question, isn't it? How do we blend this awareness of mystical influences with practical, down-to-earth financial decision-making?
It's all about finding that balance. We don't want to completely dismiss the value of intuition and those unconventional approaches. They can be powerful.
I mean, think about it. Some of the most successful investors and entrepreneurs, they credit their success, at least in part, to trusting their gut instincts.
True, but we also can't make our financial decisions solely based on hunches or astrological forecasts. We need more than that.
We got to have a solid foundation in financial literacy. That's how we make informed choices.
Couldn't agree more. That means understanding things like budgeting, investing, risk management, and diversification. It's all connected.
It's about doing your research, looking at the data, and making decisions based on sound financial principles.
Think of it like this. Financial literacy is the foundation you build your financial house on. It's got to be strong.
And then intuition, that spark of insight or that gut feeling, it can act as your compass, guiding you towards opportunities.
But remember, your compass needs a good map. You need financial knowledge to really use it effectively.
So it's not about choosing logic over intuition. It's about finding a way to use them together. They work best as a team.
Absolutely. Let's say you're thinking about investing in a particular stock. You've done all your homework, you've analyzed the company's financials, and you think it has great potential. But then something just doesn't feel right. Maybe you have this nagging sense of unease,
Like you can't shake this feeling, but you can't explain it either.
In that situation, don't ignore it. Pay attention to that feeling. Intuition can often warn us about things our conscious minds might be missing. It's valuable.
It's like our subconscious is processing information in the background and sending us these little signals.
Right. It's not about letting fear take over, but about using those feelings as a cue to dig deeper, get more information, and ultimately make a better decision.
So it's using intuition as a trigger for more investigation, not the only reason you make a financial move.
Exactly. But it's crucial to remember that intuition isn't perfect. It can be wrong sometimes.
It can definitely be swayed by biases, emotions, past experiences, all sorts of things.
And sometimes what feels like a strong intuition is really just wishful thinking or, fear disguised as insight. It's tricky.
So how do we tell the difference between real intuition and those misleading impulses? It's a tough one.
That's a question worth exploring, and that's exactly what we'll do after the break.
Stay tuned as we delve deeper into this fascinating world where the mystical and the financial collide. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been having such a great conversation.
Before the break, we were talking about that balance, between intuition and financial literacy. That's a crucial skill, especially when you're dealing with the unpredictable world of finance.
Right, it's this fascinating balancing act. Recognizing the value of those intuitive insights, but also making sure those insights are grounded in solid, practical financial knowledge.
And that leads us to something really important. The potential downsides of relying too much on intuition without that safety net of financial literacy. It's something to be aware of.
We've talked about the benefits of tuning into our gut, but what about the risks? What happens when we misinterpret those feelings or let them, cloud our judgment?
One of the biggest risks is confirmation bias. That's the tendency to look for information that supports what we already believe while ignoring evidence that, contradicts it. It's a common trap.
It's like we only see what we want to see, even if it's not really there.
Exactly. And when you're talking about finances, confirmation bias can lead to risky investments or make us ignore red flags because we're so sure our intuition is right. It can be dangerous.
It's like getting swept up in the excitement of a speculative bubble, ignoring all the warning signs because we're so convinced this time it's different.
Right. Another risk is emotional decision making. Letting fear or greed control our financial choices. That's a recipe for disaster.
We see this all the time in market cycles. Investors get caught up in the excitement of a bull market, or they panic and sell everything when things go down.
Strong emotions, they can overpower logic and make us do impulsive things that we end up regretting.
It's like our fight or flight response taking over and shutting down our rational thinking. It's hard to resist sometimes.
So how do we protect ourselves from these risks? How do we use intuition as a positive force in our financial lives, instead of a source of potential harm?
That's the big question, isn't it? How do we develop a healthy relationship with our intuition without falling into those traps?
Well, first things first, we need to build that strong foundation of financial literacy. We've been talking about it throughout this deep dive, and it's essential.
Absolutely. Understanding the basics of budgeting, investing, risk management, diversification, it's all part of the picture.
It's about having a framework for analyzing financial information and making decisions based on facts and logic. That's key.
Financial literacy, it's like a counterweight to those emotional impulses. It helps us evaluate opportunities and risks with a clear head.
It's like having a set of objective criteria to measure our intuitive insights against. It keeps us grounded.
So instead of blindly following our gut, we can use our financial knowledge to assess those feelings and make, more rational choices.
Another crucial skill is self-awareness. Being able to recognize our own biases and those emotional triggers that get us going.
It's about taking a step back and asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? Is this based on real information, or is it just my own hopes and fears talking?
We have to be honest with ourselves about our motivations and be willing to question our own assumptions. That's tough, but important.
It's about developing a healthy skepticism, even towards our own intuition. Don't just take it for granted.
And lastly, don't be afraid to ask for outside opinions.
Talk to people you trust. Financial advisors, mentors, friends who really know their stuff when it comes to finance.
Get their input, challenge your own thinking, see if they can spot any blind spots you might have. It's always helpful.
It's a good reminder that we don't have to do this alone. There are people and resources out there to help us make smart financial decisions.
At the end of the day, it's all about finding that sweet spot, that balance between intuition and financial literacy.
It's about recognizing that both have a role to play in our financial lives, but neither should be the only thing driving our decisions.
By combining these two seemingly different worlds, we can create a more well-rounded and empowered approach to managing our money.
We can use the power of intuition while also basing our choices on solid financial principles. It's the best of both worlds.
And maybe that's the ultimate takeaway from our deep dive into this mystical side of money. What do you think?
I think you're right. It's been quite a journey. We've gone from the tulip fields of 17th century Holland to the digital age of cryptocurrency, and we've seen how people have always been fascinated by finding meaning and patterns in the financial world. It's a timeless story.
We've seen how occult beliefs have shaped financial decisions, for better or worse, throughout history. And we've explored how we can use those lessons today, finding that balance between the mystical and the practical, the intuitive and the analytical. It's all connected.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and we hope it's given you some things to think about as you navigate your own financial journey.
We'll see you next time. Until then, may your financial decisions be wise and, of course, prosperous.
Psychic Stocks. Belief shapes finance.